If you have been debating how to go about printing your beautiful children's book and whether a print-on-demand service like KDP would be best, or if an offset printer would be better, this video is for you. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my weekly videos. When we as children's authors are planning to publish our beautiful children's books ourselves, one of the major decisions we will have to make is this. Do we have our books printed via what is referred to as offset printing? Or do we have our books printed via a print-on-demand or pod service like KDP or Ingram Spark? Which option should we choose? And to help us answer this question, I have created this video. So I hope that an opinion or an overview by someone that doesn't have any skin in the game is helpful. First, we'll look at what offset printing is and what print-on-demand printing is, and what each of their advantages and disadvantages are. Second, we are going to look at some actual numbers so we can better compare the cost of each of the different options, both for paperback books as well as hardcovers. And third, based on the numbers, we're going to look at what option would make most sense. So let's jump right in. Offset printing usually refers to a type of printing that occurs outside an already established distribution channel, where large quantities of usually at least 500 books are printed in a single batch. The advantage of offset printing is that this allows the author to have a lower printing cost per book, which in turn allows for a greater profit margin whenever a book is sold. The other option would be our print-on-demand option, or POD, where the books are printed one at a time after it has been ordered and paid for by a reader through a site like Amazon. KDP and Ingram Spark are such print-on-demand platforms. Now, whether we use offset printing or POD is of course entirely up to us. There's no right or wrong. What matters most is what works best for you, your budget, and the time you're able to allocate to selling your book. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of each of these options, starting with our offset printing option. The advantages of offset printing are that the printing cost per book is substantially lower, especially for hardcovers. And the more copies we purchase in bulk, the lower the printing cost per book will be. And lower printing costs will, of course, increase our overall profit margin. Another big advantage of offset printing is the quality, because offset printers tend to have more choices in terms of quality paper and colors. So the pages would look and feel a lot more like those of traditionally published books. However, the disadvantages are that we have lots of upfront costs out of pocket, which is of course quite risky because the selling of our printed copies is not guaranteed. And we also have additional costs that many often forget about. For example, there is the cost to store our inventory, keeping track of our inventory, and being responsible for the shipping and handling of our books. Now, Amazon and other providers do offer warehouse services that would be able to store our bulk inventory for us, and that would take care of the shipping and handling for us. But that would be a paid service, so this comes with an additional recurring price tag. The advantages and disadvantages of print on demand are somewhat reversed. Here, our advantage is that we essentially don't have to take on any risk because we don't have any or very few upfront costs, and we don't have to worry about storage of our inventory or about the shipping and handling. And in case of a return, it's all taken care of by Amazon. We authors wouldn't have to worry about that because the pod takes care of these eventualities for us. The disadvantage here is that the overall printing costs of our books are higher because our books are printed one copy at a time, and so our pricing of our book might not be as compatible as we wish it would be, and the profit margin can be lower as well. That being said, it's important to remember that those increased printing costs would not be paid out of pocket. Instead, this cost is simply deducted from the book price we are charging. And so this is where we as authors would have to decide whether or not the disadvantages outweigh the advantages. The question then is this: would we rather pay a large amount upfront for a bulk order of our books and therefore then be able to have a larger profit margin? Or would we prefer not having to purchase any large amounts of copies upfront out of pocket, thereby mitigating our risk, but then having to accept lower profit margins because our printing costs per copy will be slightly higher than that of the offset printing? It's a truly tricky decision to make because while we could potentially make more money per sold book with the offset printing, we can easily also lose the amounts paid for bulk orders when it turns out we are not able to sell our books as quickly as we'd hoped. Even though at first glance it might appear that offset printing will create a much higher profit per sold book, it's so important to remember and consider all the additional costs that might be incurred and would have to be deducted from any potential profit, like inventory storage costs, shipping costs of our bulk order from the printer to us, and the individual shipping costs when we are sending our books out to buyers. Not to mention the extra time spent to fulfill these orders, and of course the upfront costs that we as authors are planning to recuperate, but that is not guaranteed. And finally, something that also might influence this decision is how many books we have authored, because the more books we have written and published, the offset printing costs might just become too much. For example, I currently have over 50 books, so if I were to use offset printing, I would have to purchase 500 copies of each upfront out of pocket to always have them on hand, and I would also have to pay for storage and make shipment arrangements for all of these books. Now, I thought it might be really helpful to compare actual numbers of the two options side by side, all the costs associated with offset printing and pod printing. Please remember though that printing costs may change over time just like other costs do too. So I made sure to share all the cost calculators I've used below this video so you can use them with your own numbers anytime. These numbers right here are for an 8.5 by 8.5 inch paperback version with 40 pages printed in color. The batch size for the offset printing is 500 books, and for our print on demand option, it's simply one book because we only print whenever an order is placed. Again, I've added the links to the calculators I have used in the description below. So if I were to print 500 paperback copies of my book with an offset printer, it would cost me around $1,840 to print them, and then $207 to have them shipped to me. And whenever an order has been placed on Amazon, for example, I would pay around $3.35 to ship my book to the buyer. So for 500 books, that would be a total of $1,675 in shipping. So considering all these numbers, my total cost per paperback would be around $7.44. So if we were to charge a sales price of $9.95 over on Amazon, we would make a profit of around $2.51 per sold book. That's with our offset option. Now, what is really important to notice here is that this profit of $2.51 per paperback is only actual profit if we are selling all 500 purchased copies. I went ahead and also included the break-even point calculation here, the number of sales we have to make to break even. So here we will have to sell 374 paperback copies to just break even. So it takes 375 copies for me to make my first actual profit. Now let's compare that to our pod option for our paperback. Here our printing cost is $4.20. And although I have a shipping cost listed here, we authors don't actually have to pay that. It's simply the amount deducted from our sales price. So if we charge $9.95 for our paperback, our royalty will be $1.77. And how many copies will we have to sell to break even and actually make a profit? Just one, because we didn't have any initial costs. So when it comes to paperbacks, the profit difference is about 35%. With $2.51 for offset printing and $1.77 for pod printing. But again, we will have to sell all 500 units to truly realize this profit of $2.51 per book with the offset option. If we sell less than 374 copies, we don't make any profit and are actually losing money. But what about hardcovers? What do these numbers look like with a hardcover version? Let's take a look. If I were to print 500 hardcover copies of my book with an offset printer, it would cost me around $2,702 to print them and $650 to have them shipped to me. And again, whenever an order has been placed on Amazon, for example, I would pay around $3.35 to ship my book to the buyer. So for 500 books, that would be a total of $1,675 in shipping. So considering all these numbers, my total cost per hardcover hardcover book would be $10.05. So if we were to charge a sales price of $16 over on Amazon, we would make a profit of around $5.95. That's with our offset option. Now again, what is really important to notice here is that this profit of $5.95 per hardcover is only actual profit if we are selling all 500 purchased copies. I've also included the break-even point here again, the number of sales we have to make to break even. So here I will have to sell 314 hardcover copies to just break even. So it takes 315 copies for me to make my first actual profit. Now let's compare that to our pod option for our hardcover. Here our printing cost is $8.41. I used Ingram Sparks calculator, so I had to set a wholesale discount. I set it at the minimum of 30%. So if we charge $16 for our hardcover, our royalty will be $2.79. And how many copies will I have to sell to break even and actually make a profit? Again, just one, because we didn't have any initial costs. As you can see, when it comes to hardcovers, the difference in profits is quite a bit bigger between the two options. Here, our hardcover profit with our offset option is twice that of our pod option. But again, remember that we have to sell all 500 units to truly realize this profit of $5.95 per book with the offset option. And if we sell less than 314 copies, we don't make any profit. So when deciding which of these options to choose, it's really important to look at all these things: the costs, the benefits, and the disadvantages. So in short, our options are accepting a lower profit margin with less options in terms of sizing, quality of paper and ink that comes with our print-on-demand option, that in turn would allow us to remain risk-free because we don't have any upfront costs. Any sold copy results in a profit. Or accepting high upfront costs for slightly higher profit margins, but also higher risk with our offset printing option, because a higher profit margin is realized only if we are actually selling all our books that we have already purchased with our own money upfront. Because if we can't sell at least the number of break-even copies that I've just shared with you, we won't realize any profit. In fact, we would be in the red. So when then would offset printing make sense? And when would the print-on-demand option be a better choice? 1. Offset printing makes sense if we as the authors already have a large following or have buyers already lined up and know we can quickly and easily sell all our purchased copies. That's why we see lots and lots of Kickstarter campaigns within the self-publishing world, because that's essentially what they're doing, right? Whatever money is being collected during a Kickstarter campaign is then used to purchase bulk orders via offset printers. That's all that is. Now, regarding Kickstarter campaigns, here's a ninja tip I wanted to share and to keep in mind. Kickstarter campaigns can be so helpful in helping us finance the printing of this first batch of books. It's great because A, the made pledges pay for this first print run, and B, most of the books will then have already been spoken for, right? They are being sent to those people that made those pledges. But once that first bulk order has been sold, in order to purchase the next bulk order run, we will either, 1, have to have some money left over from that first Kickstarter campaign, 2, have to run another Kickstarter campaign, or we have to sell enough additional books so we can then use that profit to reinvest in the next batch of books. And that's why before jumping into creating a Kickstarter campaign, we need to make sure we have thought beyond the first batch of books, because once those are gone, will we have the financial means to reinvest in purchasing that needed second batch. 2, offset printing makes sense if we have the time and energy to actively promote and sell our book. Now, promoting, sharing, and marketing our books is always important to its success, no matter what option we choose, but even more so with offset printing. If you are already planning to invest lots of time into promoting your book, then offset printing can be very rewarding. But if we are already strapped for time, this may not be the best option. And third, offset printing makes sense if you have the financial means to purchase your books in bulk and don't rely on recuperating the costs quickly. If it's money you have set aside specifically for this purpose, then offset printing can be a very viable option. I have seen so many questions around whether or not to choose offset printing or print-on-demand printing. So I hope that an opinion or an overview by someone that doesn't have any skin in the game was helpful. I so hope this video helped you make a decision that works best for you and your beautiful children's book. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to helping you learn more with every single video you watch. Bye!